It was a cool but sunny spring day as Don went about his usual business at the Arman and Associates Insurance Agency. This small but cozy office was located in the city center and was famous for its professional approach and friendly attitude towards clients. Don had been working here for almost 4 years, and during that time he had not only become a true master of his craft, but had also found a certain peace in his work that he had previously only dreamed of. Just 5 years ago, Don worked in a large corporation, where a busy work schedule and constant stress were an integral part of life. There, 60 hours a week was considered the norm, and although the salary was decent, such a workload left little time for family and recreation. At some point, Don realized that he did not want to continue in the same spirit and decided to leave, despite his career prospects. He chose a more modest, but stable and respected agency, Arman and Associates, where he was able to establish a balance between work and personal life. This decision turned out to be correct. The agency, although small, had a good reputation and attracted a steady flow of clients, which provided Don with a decent income. There were only 15 people working in the office, 5 of them were brokers, and the remaining 10 were engaged in administrative and technical support. This small but close-knit community of employees created a warm atmosphere where everyone felt like part of the team. Don quickly joined the team and earned the respect of his colleagues. His calm personality and ability to connect with clients made him an indispensable employee. He liked this job. He loved the fact that he did not have to resort to the aggressive sales techniques that were so often used in large companies. People applied for insurance out of necessity, auto insurance, home insurance, and if the company's rates were reasonable, the sale would proceed without undue pressure. From the very beginning of his career in the insurance business, Don realized that his strength was his ability to build relationships with clients. He genuinely cared about making people feel comfortable and confident doing business with him. This became his main advantage. Don regularly called clients to check if everything was satisfactory, reminded them of policy renewal deadlines, and offered additional services if they were relevant. This approach paid off. Satisfied clients not only continued to cooperate with him, but also recommended him to their friends and relatives. Don gradually developed a large base of loyal clients who trusted him and appreciated his professionalism. Despite the fact that Don spent most of his working time on the phone or at the computer, today's call came as a surprise to him. He received a call from a woman who introduced herself as Terry. Her voice sounded confident, but at the same time there was a note of wariness in it, as if she was not entirely sure that she was making the right choice. Terry explained that she wanted to discuss insurance issues with Don and requested a private meeting. Don, always willing to help potential clients, happily agreed. He invited her to come to the office, noting that here they could calmly talk and discuss all the details. This call intrigued Don. Usually clients called to clarify details or get advice, but rarely did anyone immediately insist on a personal meeting. He didn't ask any unnecessary questions over the phone, but something in Terry's tone made him think that this might not be a completely standard matter. Perhaps she was faced with some difficult situation that required special attention. Don't put aside all his current affairs and prepare for the upcoming meeting, checking in advance whether he had free time in his schedule. I'm not going to buy insurance, Mr. Primack, but I need to meet with you. You don't know me, but I have information you should see, she said. Don started asking questions, but Terry was secretive. This is a personal matter, not related to business, and I am not selling anything. Please just give me a few minutes this afternoon. Don thought that such a meeting was strange, and maybe even dangerous, but the call intrigued him, and curiosity got the better of him. He often met and formed connections with people and experienced many strange situations over the years. This Terry seemed educated and sincere. She was secretive, but he thought, I'll have to go and find out what it is. The coffee shop was one of those cozy local establishments that didn't look like your typical chain cafe. It was set up for sitting with a friend or two, mostly with comfy easy chairs, but also had a few tables and chairs for those who wanted to get some work done. Since it was already late in the day, the place was almost empty. Three students sat at tables with books and papers spread around their laptops. They looked down intently and did not raise their heads when Don entered. He stopped a few steps from the door and looked around the room for Terry. Terry said she would be wearing a green shirt and was easy to spot, sitting in the far corner in one of the easy chairs. Don approached her. "Hello, I'm Don Primack." He lightly shook the woman's hand. "Hello, I'm Terry Dixon," she replied with a slight smile. "Would you like to grab some coffee before we start?" "No, thank you. I don't have much time," Don said, planning ahead for the possibility of a quick exit. He didn't like aggressive sales, but he knew how to build conversations. Being able to quickly end a conversation helped both parties feel more comfortable. "Have we met before, Miss Dixon?" They had already discussed this issue on the phone, but Don was simply creating the conditions for starting a conversation. "No, we haven't," Terry replied, but did not add any details. Don could see that she was nervous. He sat down in a comfortable chair opposite her. "Okay, I'm curious, why are we meeting today? Your call was very mysterious. How can I help you?" Don didn't know Terry, but he could clearly see that she was uncomfortable. She stared into Don's eyes for several seconds, as if she was trying to better understand him without words. Don smiled, trying to ease her tension. "I don't need anything, Mr. Primack, but I have information you need to see. We don't know each other. I don't think we've ever met, but our spouses both work for Davin Construction." The conversation paused for a moment, and they both looked at each other. Don didn't know where this conversation would lead them, but he felt uneasy. There was deep fear or worry on Terry's face, and the look made Don feel uncomfortable. They looked at each other in silence for a while, trying to relieve the tension in the slightly awkward atmosphere. Terry started to speak, but fell silent, as if searching for words. Then her voice became more decisive. "I'll get straight to the point, Mr. Primack. I have bad news for you. I asked you to come here to show me the evidence I received from the private detective agency I hired recently." Terry was silent for a few seconds, allowing Don to digest this statement. Don's previous feeling of worry suddenly gave way to fear. Up until this point, it had just been a strange conversation, but now his mind was crystal clear. Now he concentrated, trying to predict where this conversation would lead. Every possible option he could imagine led in an undesirable direction. He looked deeply into Terry's eyes, as if he was trying to see her words before she said them. But instead of words, he saw her sadness. "What evidence?" he finally asked. "Well, like I said, I know your wife works for Davin Construction, and my husband is the vice president of marketing for the company. I'm sorry to tell you this, but your wife and my husband are having an affair." Suddenly, the room seemed to narrow, as if the walls began to slowly, inexorably move inward, looming over him. Don continued to see with his eyes, but the images around him lost their meaning, turning into blurry, meaningless blurs. His mind seemed stuck in a viscous fog, fixated on a single thought that pierced him like a hot arrow. Brenda cheating? This thought seemed to burn out everything else. For several long moments his gaze remained motionless, directed into emptiness. Everything that came into view seemed to bounce off an invisible wall, not reaching consciousness. Time around stood still, as if someone had turned off the sound and movement of the world. His mind resisted, unwilling to accept reality, but this resistance only made the painful clarity of what was happening worse. Seconds probably passed, but to Don they seemed like an eternity. Gradually, fragments of thoughts began to emerge from the chaos, like drifting fragments of a shipwreck. Slowly, painfully slowly, he returned to the present, where Terry sat. Her presence seemed to fill the room with a painful silence. His gaze darted to her eyes, as if trying to find salvation or denial, but instead he saw only sadness in them. A deep, aching sadness that only served to reinforce his worst fears. He wanted to say something, but the words did not come. There was a lump in my throat, and my lips seemed to have lost the ability to move. His thoughts revolved around one idea: how, why, when, but he didn't know where to start. Every word, every thought seemed insufficient to express the hurricane of feelings destroying him. Terry, on the other hand, sat motionless, restraining herself so as not to betray the trembling running through her body. When she first read the private investigator's report, pain pierced her like a sharp needle. Then it was a shock that hit her suddenly. But now the pain was different, heavy, deep, like an old wound that is cut again and again. Seeing Don's pain, his confusion only intensified this severity. She couldn't break this silence. She knew words wouldn't help. Terry let silence fill the room, giving Don time. Each second of this silent pause stretched out, turning into long minutes. It was as if the room itself was holding its breath. Terry understood. This was his moment. He had to comprehend everything himself and find the strength to cope with this shock. Don finally moved, as if emerging from a thick fog. His eyes focused on Terry again, but they already showed not only pain, but also pleading. He expected something from her explanations, support, truth. She prepared to answer, but continued to wait, allowing him to make the first move, knowing that any words would have to come from him. "What do you mean by novel?" Don finally asked. "What were they doing? How long does this last?" "The private agency I hired believes the affair lasted about a year. They received information from several company employees Davin Construction who work with George and Brenda," Terry said. Don realized that Terry knew his wife's name. This fact intensified the feeling of his stomach turning. "Apparently, they have long lunches at least once a week." It was not difficult for the detective to find out that they were going to a hotel not far from the office. Terry pulled the envelope out of her purse and placed it on the table in front of Don. "Everyone is here," she said. "I don't have candid photographs, but I have audio recordings of their intimate meetings. We also have recorded phone calls, messages, and email correspondence. My agency documented everything very carefully." "Oh my God," was all Don could say. It was all too real and happening too quickly. Previously, he didn't know why Terry invited him to the meeting, but he certainly didn't expect to hear this. He fell silent for a moment and stared at the envelope. He saw the name on it, Howard Investigative Service. He imagined what could be inside, but did not dare to take it in his hands. Terry noticed Dawn looking at the envelope. "Everything is in this envelope," she said softly. Dawn didn't know how to answer. He didn't know what to do next, but from how seriously Terry spoke and how obvious her sadness was, he knew it was true. Don couldn't believe that his wife was cheating on him, and for so long. A year or more. How could I not notice this? There had to be some signs, Don said out loud, thinking more to himself than to Terry. "I know. I didn't suspect anything about George either. We've always been so close. I was just as shocked as you, Mr. Primack. I only hired detectives because one of the Davin Construction sent me an anonymous letter. Please call me Don. Can I call you Terry? Looks like we have something in common now." "Okay, Don. I plan to talk to George tomorrow, but I wanted you to know first. I'm sure your wife will know they've been found out as soon as I tell George." Don was a little taken aback by her statement. "Tomorrow? Why so fast? Can I wait a day or two so I can recover? I need to think about all this. I don't know what to do next. Can you please put this off for a day or two?" "Okay, Dawn, I'll wait a couple of days. After all, I've known about this for weeks, but I don't want to delay. Detectives said the lovers were going on a trip together in a couple of weeks. Damn it, I won't let them ride away like two love birds." "Wow, this might be the same conference Brenda has been talking about for a month. When should it be?" "I don't know if there's even a conference, but detectives say they've booked a 4-day adult cruise starting on the 14th of this month." Dawn was still in a state of shock. How the hell could she do this? "We have 2 small children." Terry moved the envelope closer to Dawn. "This is your copy, Dawn. I warn you, this is not easy reading. It's like being stabbed in the heart when you realize that the one you love has deceived you so much and ruined everything. I'm very sorry to bring you this news. There is my phone number on the envelope. Call me when you're ready." Terry seemed so reserved, Dawn thought, but realized that she had known about this for a long time. He had just learned the terrible truth, but he already knew that if this was true, his marriage was over. "Thank you, Terry. I'll call you soon." Just give me some time to process all this. Since I'm asking you to wait to talk to George, I won't talk to Brenda until I tell you I'm going to do so. I just don't know what to do right now. I need to plan my actions. Dawn, I'm so angry at George for ruining our lives. Now you are in shock, but believe me, soon your shock will give way to anger. I don't know what you're going to do, but I won't stay married to a cheater. I'm so angry that I want to make him pay. I would like to take revenge on this selfish bastard, but I haven't figured out how yet. I think I'll just talk to him and then file for divorce. And he probably won't care. He and Brenda will most likely ride off into the sunset, and you and I will be left behind. If you have any ideas on how to get them to pay, let me know. Maybe we can send letters to our colleagues, or should we hire detectives to find out even more? I'm just not sure it will work. I still have a contract with the agency. Make them pay, Don asked in a thoughtful tone, looking across the coffee shop. Yeah, maybe I'll think of something, Terry. I'll think about it. Everything is so confusing. I just don't know right now. Sorry to bring you such bad news today, Dawn, Terry said, standing up from her chair. Call me if you need anything. See you soon. Terry left the coffee shop. Her figure disappeared behind the door, which closed behind her with a quiet sound, leaving behind a feeling of slight emptiness. Dawn remained seated at the small wooden table, leaning over a cup of coffee that had long cooled down. He did not notice how his fingers began to rhythmically drum on the tabletop, reflecting the internal tension. Everything around seemed to slow down. Students hastily turning the pages of books, a waitress carefully arranging cups on a tray, the muffled noise of a coffee machine. All this became unimportant. His thoughts swirled like shadows in the fog. What should I do now? Don thought, fixing his gaze on the envelope lying in front of him. A small, flat rectangle of paper, but with such heaviness as if his whole life was contained in it. Looking inside was the last thing he wanted. My heart sank in my chest, as if my body itself was protesting against opening this source of possible pain, and yet he understood that it was necessary. A little more, and he would do it, a decisive step that seemed to change his fate forever. The envelope beckoned and frightened at the same time. Whatever it is, there is no going back, the thought flashed. He ran his fingers carefully along the edge of the paper, feeling the rough texture as if trying to grasp its reality. His future, everything he was, everything he could become, now depended on the contents inside. He sighed, glancing at those around him. The young people in the coffee shop were busy with their own affairs. Some were typing on a laptop, some were recording lectures, some were arguing animatedly about something. It looks like I'm also doing my homework, like everyone else here, Don thought with a bitter smile, mechanically rubbing his temples. But these lessons had nothing to do with academic knowledge. There was no room for simple answers or clear instructions on what to do. All that was left was to figure out what was inside the envelope and find a way to move on. But this path will certainly not be easy. His thoughts returned to the children. They were everything to him. Carter and Ellie are two little sons that illuminate his life. He always tried to be a good father. He took them to training, read fairy tales before bed, listen to their small joys and big worries. But if everything turns out to be true, their world will be destroyed. Don feared this most of all. I was afraid to see the fear and pain in their eyes, to explain to them why Mom and Dad could no longer be together. At some point, he felt a warm tear roll down his cheek. He quickly wiped it away, hoping no one noticed. It all started with Terry's suspicions. She was always insightful, able to read people like an open book. And if she was right, if that envelope contained evidence that Brenda was cheating, then divorce was inevitable. This word sounded like a sentence. He hated it. Hated the thought of their family ending. But he could not stay with his unfaithful wife. It would be a betrayal of oneself. He tried to figure out what his fault was. Maybe he wasn't paying enough attention to Brenda. Perhaps he was too immersed in work or did not notice her small requests, gestures, hints. He began to analyze every moment of their life together, trying to understand where he made a mistake. Were they happy? Or was it just an illusion that he maintained for so long for the sake of his children? Don left work earlier than usual, and Brenda didn't expect him home for another couple of hours. So he sat down calmly and began to read the report with its sordid details. It took him almost 2 hours to read everything. There was a lot of information, and it all seemed incredible. Inside, there was also a flash drive with recorded calls that were transcribed into documents, as well as several photographs of them holding hands and kissing. There were also pictures of them entering and leaving hotels. All this disgusted Don. He looked around for the toilet in case he threw up. By the time he finished reading, everything became absolutely clear. Brenda was not a loving and caring wife and mother. She was not a mother concerned about the well-being of the family. She was a selfish, lying, cheating wife, and this went on for over a year. She met with her lover at least once a week, and they were together even during her 2 business trips. Don thought he knew her almost better than she knew herself, but in reality he had no idea who she really was. 7 years ago, Don and Brenda met shortly after they both graduated from college. Life was just beginning to pick up pace, and they found themselves at the start of their professional journey in the same company. The company specialized in developing its solutions for inventory management, serving large enterprises that need to optimize logistics and warehouse processes. Don joined the company as an assistant product manager, taking a position in one of the key departments. Brenda was a year older in experience, and her workplace was in the accounting department. Fate brought them together at a Christmas party organized by the company at the very end of December. It was a large and formal event held in the city center. For employees, the party became a long-awaited opportunity to take a break from everyday work, dress up, and socialize in an informal setting. Brenda did not plan to stand out much this evening, but her environment literally pushed her to look brighter. Among those who accompanied her to the event was Natalie, one of her colleagues and perhaps the most talkative friend that Brenda managed to make during her work at Davin Construction. As the girls gathered together to prepare for the party, Natalie couldn't help but rave about Brenda's appearance. "Brenda, you look amazing in this outfit," Natalie said with genuine admiration, her smile shining as brightly as the lights on the holiday tree. Brenda blushed slightly at the compliment, but smiled back. "Thank you, Nat. I like to dress up from time to time," she answered modestly, although she herself still felt slightly embarrassed by such attention. Natalie continued to admire her friend, adding, "Well, you're just gorgeous, Bren. This red dress accentuates your curves so perfectly. The guys will definitely be crazy about you today," she said with a perky wink. Brenda wasn't sure that her image would have exactly such an effect, but she didn't mind her friend's playful predictions. She rarely thought about specifically attracting the attention of men. With her light brown, straight hair and deep brown eyes, she considered herself quite attractive, but nothing more. Sometimes she felt like she wasn't thin enough. Brenda considered herself a little plump, especially compared to girls like Natalie, who looked confident and graceful in any outfit. At 5 feet 4 inches, she did not feel tall or graceful. Her figure was far from what she considered ideal, but Brenda never gave it too much importance. She didn't spend a lot of time on makeup or complicated hairstyles. Her approach to appearance was simple and natural. Usually, she preferred to focus on her work, devoting her free time to friends or hobbies. Social and outgoing by nature, Brenda always got along with her colleagues, but she lacked that spark that made other girls the center of attention. When she and her friends went to bars or clubs, she noticed that the guys were more often interested in others. It didn't upset her, but it did add confidence to her that being in the shadows was her normal place. Sometimes, when guys were flirting with Brenda's friends, she would talk to one of them, and more than once this led to them ending up in the same bed. She was not shy and enjoyed the sexual experience, but after that they rarely continued communication. Sometimes she felt like a consolation prize in these meetings. But at the Christmas party, Don noticed Brenda. She seemed to him the most modest among all the girls. She was wearing a mid-length red dress trimmed with white lace. For him, she was the most beautiful, and he wanted to meet her. Brenda saw Don heading towards their group. She thought that he, like many others, would ask Natalie or Teresa to dance. But as he came closer, he looked straight at her. "Would you like to dance?" Dawn asked, looking straight into her eyes. Brenda was pleasantly surprised and agreed. After the dance, Dawn asked to stay for one more. Soon they spent more than an hour together. "You are a very beautiful woman, and I would like to get to know you better," Dawn told her. "Can I take your number and call you?" Brenda smiled and nodded. They returned to the table, and Dawn handed her his phone. "Send a text to your number so I can save it." When she did, Dawn looked her in the eye, smiled, nodded, and walked away. "What luck," Natalie said, winking at Brenda. Brenda thought about Dawn a lot in the following days. At the party, he was very nice and attentive. He had her phone number, and now she wondered if he would call. "I won't get my hopes up," she thought. Too many times in the past she had waited for someone to call, but it never happened. However, on Monday evening, Brenda was pleasantly surprised. Dawn called and invited her to a movie on Friday. Their date went great, and they soon began spending most of their free time together. Dawn quickly fell in love with her, and Brenda was happy with the attention. She was not used to a man devoting so much time and care to her. Dawn was fascinated by her and wooed her with flowers and chocolates. On dates, he always tried to make everything special. Brenda loved being pampered, and little by little he won her heart. Sometimes even nerds get lucky, Dawn thought. Brenda enjoyed his care and told all her friends about him. She had a lot of company and often posted about her experiences on Facebook. "He's a romantic," her friend Teresa wrote, before adding, "He's a gem, Brenda. You don't see people like this every day." After one of the wonderful dates, Brenda came home and fell on the bed without even having time to undress. She was in a state of euphoria. She hadn't felt this way since her first crush in high school. "I found a man who thinks I'm special. I didn't even think that men could still behave like that." When they were together, Dawn always held her hand, opened doors for her, and was often affectionate in public. A light kiss on the cheek made her heart flutter. Brenda realized that she was falling in love with him more and more. She seemed to be losing her head with happiness and enjoying every minute. It was a wonderful feeling to fall in love. Dawn and Brenda had been dating for about a month and still spent most of their free time together. This Friday night was no exception, but Dawn had special plans. "Where are we going today?" Brenda asked. "You'll see. It's a surprise," he replied as they drove into the city center. Brenda looked around with intrigue. Finally, Dawn started looking for parking. "I think there are some empty seats over there," Brenda pointed out. A few minutes later, they stood in front of the club. The sign said that the band Blue October was performing today. "Oh my God, Dawn, how did you know that I love Blue October?" "I saw that this is one of your favorite groups on Facebook," he replied with a big smile. Brenda hugged him and kissed him. "Thank you, Dawn. I don't even know how to thank you." Then she paused and looked into his eyes seriously. "Although no, I know how to thank you, but I'll have to wait until tonight," she added with a wide smile. Blue October's performance exceeded all her expectations, and after a great evening, they headed home. Later, when they entered Brenda's house, they started kissing passionately right outside the door. Brenda wasn't shy, but she carried Herselfim slower than usual with this guy who was courting her. She didn't want to scare off someone who seemed to want a serious relationship. But now the passions in both of them were running high. The connection of their lips seemed to generate electricity from their very touch. They tried, with some difficulty, to remove each other's clothes without interrupting the electric kissing session. They managed to remove everything from the waist up, allowing Dawn to take 2 handfuls of Brenda's lovely breasts. Dawn leaned closer to her, his lips slowly moving over her skin. He lingered on her collarbone, as if wanting to give her every moment of his tenderness. His touches were light, almost airy, but at the same time they gave Brenda goosebumps all over her body. "Oh God, this feels so good," she whispered, closing her eyes and giving in to the sensations. Her voice was almost inaudible, but there was genuine pleasure in it. Dawn raised his head, his gaze full of warmth and sincere admiration. He enjoyed her reaction, her joy, her trusting smile. But deep down, he knew that he wanted more, not just touches, but real intimacy, where words would be superfluous. Brenda touched his arm gently, as if inviting him to move on. Her gesture was light but eloquent. She got up from the sofa and, taking his hand, led him to the bedroom. There was something bewitching in her movements, confidence, and at the same time touching tenderness. Once they were in the room, the sun's rays breaking through the curtains softly illuminated the space, creating an atmosphere of comfort and warmth. Brenda turned to Dawn and slowly began to take off her blouse, exposing her shoulders. Her movements were leisurely, as if she wanted every moment to remain in her memory. He stepped closer, putting his arm around her waist, and their eyes met. It was as if a spark ran between them. Dawn carefully helped her get rid of her clothes, each time asking with his eyes if everything was okay. She nodded, smiling, and their connection became even stronger. They fell onto the bed, laughing like children who were suddenly allowed to do something forbidden. Brenda spread her arms, stretched, and closed her eyes, enjoying the softness of the sheets and the warmth that emanated from Dawn. He, in turn, leaned towards her, continuing to hug her, giving her warmth and a feeling of complete security. There was no rush in their movements. Every touch, every gesture spoke of sincere intimacy. Dawn stroked her hair, touched her shoulders, and whispered something barely audible that made her smile and laugh. The clock seemed to have stopped. Time lost its meaning, and all that remained were two people who were here and now, sharing moments that did not require words. After some time, they lay side by side, exhausted and satisfied. Brenda turned to Dawn, her eyes shining with happiness. "It seems like we could spend forever like this," she whispered, hugging his shoulder. Dawn smiled, closing his eyes and enjoying her closeness. "Perhaps forever is too short," he replied with a small smile, pulling her closer. The silence of the room was filled with warmth that emanated from both of them. They knew that their connection was more than just moments of passion. It was the beginning of something deep, real, and very meaningful. They married in a simple ceremony attended by many friends and family members. In addition to her family, Brenda's entire circle of friends were there, making the celebration quite crowded. In the months that followed, Brenda was incredibly happy and enjoying their married life. She constantly dragged Dawn to events and parties and published many photos of their adventures. Brenda loved sharing the little moments of their lives with people. She was clearly proud of her man, and it made Don't feel special. He wondered if anyone was actually interested in their details, but her posts always received a lot of positive feedback. Dawn loved that she was so proud of their relationship and their life together. Present tense. Terry remembered that day with amazing clarity, as if it happened yesterday. George's graduation party became the starting point of their common history. She remembered standing at the dessert table, straightening the dress her mother had chosen for her. It was slightly too big, but it emphasized her fragile figure and light brown hair, collected in a neat bun. Terry felt out of place among adults and their conversations about careers, successes, and plans for the future. When George approached her, she noticed how he had changed over the years of study. He became more confident, fit, and incredibly charming. His smile seemed to illuminate everything around. He asked how she was doing and suddenly suggested taking a walk in the garden. Terry, despite her shyness, agreed. They walked along a well-groomed path strewn with rose petals and chatted about everything and nothing. George talked about his plans to start a career in a large company, and Terry talked about his dreams of going to university and becoming an interior designer. Their conversation was light, but with each step it became more personal. George asked her if she remembered how he teased her as a child, to which Terry replied that it was impossible to forget. It was then that George looked at her differently for the first time. There was something more than just friendly sympathy in his gaze. He suddenly stopped, looked into her eyes, and said, "You really have grown up beautiful." This moment took Terry by surprise. She blushed as she had done many years ago, but this time something had changed inside her. She wanted this evening not to end. After graduation, George began visiting her family more and more often. They walked, went to the lake together, and laughed at old memories. Gradually, their friendship grew into something more. A year later, they started dating, and 2 years later, they got married. Now, 26 years later, Terry sat in the living room and thought about how the boy who once teased her had changed. What went wrong? Their marriage always seemed stable, filled with laughter, shared memories, and support. But in the last few years, something has changed. George began to withdraw, spending more time at work or outside the home. She felt lonely, despite all her outward well-being. The meeting with Don only strengthened her inner doubts. He was kind, understanding, and talking to him reminded her of how easy and joyful life could be. Although she didn't want to admit it, she enjoyed Don's attention. But she knew she couldn't afford to go too far. Unlike George, she valued loyalty and responsibility. Collecting her thoughts, Terry decided it was time to change something. She needed to talk to George. Not about the move, not about the house, but about what's happening to their marriage. Deep down, she still hoped that their love could be saved, that memories of the past could bring them back to each other. But what if this is no longer possible? What if their story is coming to an end? She got up from her chair and went to the window. It was beginning to snow outside, and the fire in the fireplace was reflected in the glass. Whatever awaits us next, I must be ready, she thought, and took the first deep breath of the entire evening. She was now 19 and George was 26. When she first walked into the yard, George recognized her immediately. Although he had a hard time recognizing her older appearance, standing next to her parents, he knew it was Terry. Wow, you've really grown, he thought. Tall, blonde, with a graceful gait. As she stood receiving greetings from his parents, her manner amazed George. Looking at her, he thought that she reminded him of that German girl from the beer bottle label. He couldn't take his eyes off her and went straight to his parents. George looked straight into her eyes and said, "Wow, you're such an adult." He began to ask what she was doing while her parents slowly stepped aside. It was obvious where their attention was focused. After the first conversation, they dispersed through the crowd, chatting with other friends, but again and again they found a reason to return to each other. George always found a new question to start the next dialogue. Terry was captivated by George this evening. She noticed that he was paying special attention to her. Even if they remained just friends, she was pleased that he singled her out. George had achieved a lot, and she was proud of him. Later, George saw Terry and her parents saying goodbye to his parents at the gate. He came closer and quietly thanked her for coming. "It was great to see you again. I'd like to know more about how you're doing. Do you mind having dinner tomorrow night?" Terry smiled and looked straight into his eyes. She wanted him to know how much she appreciated his offer. "Of course, George, that would be great." Over the next 2 weeks, George and Terry went on several dates. George made it clear how much Terry liked him, and although they kissed at the end of every evening, on the last night they made out passionately in his car for about 15 minutes while he dropped her off at home. "Terry, I'm going to San Francisco, but I won't forget about you. If you are ready for a long-distance relationship, I would like to continue dating you. I know we can find a way to make this work." They really found a way. For a whole year, their romance developed through electronic means of communication, and then they decided to make their relationship permanent. 18 months later, they had a big wedding, and Terry moved out west to be with George. They had now been married for 26 years. Such a long marriage could speak of the stability and strength of their relationship, but in reality, everything turned out to be not so simple. Once upon a time, in the early years of their life together, George and Terry really were a real team. Together, they went through the joys and difficulties associated with raising children, overcame everyday difficulties, and supported each other. George was then completely absorbed in building his career, and Terry readily took on all the care of the house. She was the person who provided family comfort, who created a sense of stability and order, while George worked his way up the career ladder. They understood each other perfectly, and a feeling of unity and mutual support reigned in their relationship. However, over the years, everything has changed. The children grew up, and each of them went their own way, leaving their parents home behind. At first, it seemed normal and natural after all. This is how it should be. Children grow up and begin to live their own lives. But with their departure, what had previously filled the house with noise, laughter, and worries also disappeared. At the same time, George and Terry began to realize that their unifying thread was becoming thinner. At some point, they realized that without the usual parental responsibilities, it was as if they no longer had a common goal. Each of them was immersed in their own thoughts and affairs, and the previous feeling of closeness and unity that had once been the basis of their relationship gradually disappeared. George, always purposeful and focused on his career, suddenly faced a new challenge. Having reached a high level in his company and taken the position of vice president, he began to realize that further career growth was unlikely. This discovery did not come to him immediately, but the more he reflected on his work, the clearer he realized. In a modern world where technology and digital literacy are increasingly important, he no longer feels on the crest of the wave. The youth he worked with often used terms and concepts that seemed completely incomprehensible to him. At such moments, George felt like a stranger, as if they were talking to him in a foreign, unknown language. Working for Davin Construction has always been an important part of George's life. He had worked there for many years and felt comfortable in his role as vice president of marketing. During this time, he gained the respect of his colleagues and built a strong reputation as a professional. But one day, several years ago, Brenda came to the company. She took a position in the finance department where she managed supplier partnerships. Her work sometimes overlapped with the marketing department, and so George and Brenda often found themselves in meetings together. From the very beginning, George paid attention to Brenda. Her sociability, friendliness, and ease of communication attracted people, and George was no exception. Brenda was always smiling and open. It was easy to get along with her. George began to notice that he enjoyed spending time with her and that their conversations were enjoyable. Despite his usual caution in relationships with colleagues, he allowed himself a little flirtation. With Brenda, it was different. She reciprocated his feelings. At first, it was just fleeting conversations, light jokes, and compliments. However, over the past couple of months, their communication has become more frequent and less formal. They had lunch together several times, sometimes in the company of colleagues, but sometimes just the two of us. George began to notice how he was drawn to this woman. He began to compliment her, noting her clothing style, new hairstyle, or accessories. Brenda seems to have changed too. She began to pay more attention to her appearance, choosing elegant outfits and adding light makeup. This could not go unnoticed by George. A whole whirlwind of emotions arose inside him. On the one hand, he felt revitalization, something akin to excitement and even a slight trepidation, which he had not experienced for a long time. On the other hand, he understood that deeper feelings could be hidden behind this slight flirtation. Brenda felt George's attention and knew he liked her. She was pleased to attract such a man, especially one as attractive as George. Sometimes she caught herself thinking about him and even wondered what he was like in bed. Dreaming a little isn't scary, she thought. At the Wednesday morning meeting, George approached her. Brenda, Greg said you were talking to Ace Construction about a partnership. I have a meeting with them on Friday about a project, and I would like to know more about your contacts. Brenda smiled. Tomorrow morning, I'm swamped with work, but in the afternoon, I think I'll be able to find time. Will it be okay at 4? Sorry, Brenda, but I have meetings all day. George saw an opportunity to get closer to Brenda and suggested, maybe we should go out to dinner tomorrow night. We could discuss the Ace partnership over a nice dinner. I promised to choose a nice place. Brenda realized that George had more than just the project in mind. She felt a little nervous thinking about her upcoming dinner with him. She decided to tease him. George, I'm married. I can't go with you. He realized that she was joking. I promised to be a gentleman, at least at dinner, he winked. Brenda knew she shouldn't flirt with a man in that situation. After all, they were both married. But it's just dinner. Is there anything wrong with that? If you really need to know about Ace, then I think dinner would be fine. She tried to maintain the appearance of indifference. As long as the place is decent, Brenda winked. The next morning, Brenda took extra care in choosing her clothes and doing her makeup. In the shower, she even shaved her legs and trimmed her private hair a little. Brenda wasn't planning on doing anything sexual with George, but she was having fun feeling a little more attractive. At first, Brenda felt guilty at dinner. They were having dinner at one of the best restaurants in the area, and she was there with another man. A man who had been interested in her and had been flirting with her for months. It felt like treason, but Brenda tried not to think about it. George behaved like a true gentleman. He was so sophisticated and easy to talk to. She didn't plan anything other than dinner. Gradually, she relaxed, and they began to enjoy their time together. "Brenda, you look great today." Brenda blushed. "Thank you, George." Soon they started touching each other's hands across the table. Brenda's heart was beating faster. She felt the thrill again, like she had with Dawn all those years ago. "Why is George interested in me?" she thought. "He is an attractive man and could court women much more beautiful than me." Brenda always considered herself to be of average appearance. She rarely wore makeup and had a couple of extra pounds. But sitting at the table, watching him look at her with desire, she felt flattered, even if they were just having dinner. "I won't let this go any further," Brenda thought. "I love Don, and even if George worries me, I'm not going to go to bed with him." Over the next few weeks, George went out of his way to talk to Brenda at work. She felt that he was interested in her and enjoyed the secret excitement that their budding relationship brought. But Brenda wasn't sure he'd ask her out again. A month had passed since their dinner, and he had not mentioned meeting again. Finally, he came to her desk one afternoon. "Brenda, can we talk again over dinner?" Brenda couldn't contain her joy. He really wanted her, and she felt as excited as a schoolgirl. "Of course, George, I'd love to go to dinner with you again." At the second dinner, George again told her what a beautiful woman she was and held her hand. They discussed their preferences and interests and discovered that they had a lot in common. The dinner was wonderful, and George kept reaching across the table to take her hand. As they walked to their cars, George stopped Brenda, holding her close to him. They looked into each other's eyes, and Brenda realized what was about to happen. Then he kissed her. She felt the blood rush to her face and kissed him back. The passion between them grew, and George opened the door of his Mercedes and put Brenda in the front seat. She felt excited when he walked around the car and got behind the wheel. They started kissing again, and Brenda felt her body fill with desire. Brenda felt George wrap his arms around her, his touch becoming more confident. She noticed a strange excitement growing inside her, giving rise to an unexpected thrill. His voice sounded softly in her ear. "We could spend time together at a hotel nearby." Her gaze became serious, and she tried to object. "George, I'm not sure this is a good idea." He answered her with a smile and was in no hurry to leave. Their closeness seemed natural and attractive. After some time, Brenda, succumbing to his charm, quietly whispered, "Okay, take me there." Thus began their passionate romance. They had been dating for almost a year, making love like crazy. Sometimes Brenda felt like it was like a great adventure. Having another man in her life and planning their meetings seemed exciting to her. George always found ways to arrange their dates. At a Monday morning meeting, George and Brenda sat across the conference table from each other. As Bill from the logistics department talked monotonously, Brenda stole a glance at George. George touched his nose. This was their secret sign. After the meeting, he approached her in the corridor. When the people separated, he announced that he was planning a trip for them together. Previously, they traveled to the same business meetings, adding a couple of days for themselves. This time, he said, it would be exclusively for them. "We're going on a cruise for adults." Brenda held her breath with excitement. "Wow, George, cruise. It sounds so luxurious. Are you sure we can pull this off?" "Don't worry. I have a great plan and we'll have a great time." Brenda loved Dawn and adored her children. She understood that the affair could lead to serious consequences, so she promised herself to be careful. Their meetings were limited to a few hours a week, and sometimes to joint trips. It was all so much like a spy novel that Brenda felt like the heroine of an adventure story. Meanwhile, George's wife, Terry, began to suspect something was wrong after noticing a feminine scent on her husband's clothes. After several checks, her fears were confirmed and she hired detectives. They soon found out almost all the details. George has completed his preparations for the cruise. It was a private cruise for adults, full of seductive entertainment. There will be nudist beaches, and we'll have a lot of fun in the sun, he told Brenda. That night, Brenda told her husband that she had a conference in a few weeks, adjusting everything to his schedule. Don is so calm, she thought. He won't even suspect anything. Terry, how are you? It was a call from Don 2 days after their meeting in a cafe. As best as possible in such a situation. And you? I'm furious. I can't believe what these two are doing. I decided that I would file for divorce. Yes, I understand. I'm also going to file for divorce from George. Shall we discuss this with them tonight? No, Terry. I have a plan to take revenge on them. It looks like this will end in divorce for both of us, but I have an idea to teach them a lesson. Are you ready to get some revenge on George? Absolutely, Dawn. It would be nice not to be just a pawn in this story. What's your plan? Dawn and Terry met again for coffee, and he shared his plan with her. Yes, we'll let them enjoy their grown-up cruise, but things won't go the way they expect. Over the next 2 weeks, Dawn and Terry worked out the details of their plan. The fateful day arrived, and George and Brenda went to their conference in Miami. Brenda was almost out of the house that morning when Dawn stopped her. Brenda, I have loved you for 10 years, and I love our life and our 2 beautiful children. I give my all in this marriage, and I hope you do the same. Brenda thought Dawn was saying strange things, but was too distracted, afraid of missing her flight. Of course, Dawn, I love you with all my heart. Dawn just looked into her eyes. She seemed not at all affected by his words. He saw before him the lying, cheating woman she had become. She cared little about their marriage, their family, or him as a man. What a selfish piece of trash she is, Dawn thought, but decided to give her another chance. Brenda, maybe you should skip this conference and stay home with the kids and me. Since you're not welcome at work, we could go to Fun World and have a family event. What do you think, Brenda? Just me and the kids. Dawn, it's too late to refuse. I have to learn our new accounting system, Brenda lied. My boss will be angry if I don't go. Dawn looked at her with despair. He knew it was just another one of her many lies, a lie that has been going on for a year. Fuck her, he thought, looking straight at her. Have a good time, Brenda. George and Brenda were already on board the cruise ship, awaiting departure. Brenda called Dawn. I'm already at the hotel for the conference. There will be a busy few days ahead, but I will try to call you in the evenings. I love you, Dawn. It was a short call, and Dawn guessed that they were rushing to their cabin to begin their debauched holiday. What George and Brenda didn't know was that they were already being watched by 2 private investigators taking photographs of them. A couple of hours later, Dawn and Terry began receiving pictures from aboard the ship. The next day, George and Brenda were sunbathing by the pool. The sun was warm, and George persuaded Brenda to take off her swimsuit top. Soon, photos of a half-naked Brenda kissing George by the pool began trickling in to Dawn. Dawn began to implement the plan. He called Terry and said it was time to temporarily turn off George and Brenda's phones. Both had joint phone plans with their spouses, and the companies easily agreed to suspend phone service. Well, let's start the game, Dawn said out loud. He logged into Brenda's Facebook account. It was easy. Brenda used the same password for most of her personal accounts. Dawn then posted photos of the lovers by the pool. It blurred the nudity, but it was obvious that she was not wearing a swimsuit top. Dawn attached the following post to the photos. Facebook post. I loved Dawn, and he was a good husband and father, but I decided to find myself a lover. I don't care if Dawn divorces me. As you can see, my new man is a real handsome man, and we are currently on a cruise. What do you say? Isn't he cute? He's also the vice president of the company where I work, so I'm moving up after that old Dawn. It seems that I have already forgotten about him. I'll try to post more photos tomorrow. Dawn counted down, 3, 2, 1, and pressed send. He watched the comments with amusement over the next few hours. What the hell? Are you crazy? Friends wrote on Brenda's page that she was crazy and asked Dawn how she could do this. Most of the comments boiled down to one word: unfriending. Everything went exactly according to plan. Dawn didn't know how long it would be before someone found a way to contact Brenda, but with the phone off, it wasn't going to be easy. A couple of hours later, Dawn's phone rang. It was Brenda's sister, Carla. Dawn always liked Carla. Hey, Carla. No, I haven't heard from Brenda since last night. She's at a conference in Florida. No, I don't know of anything unusual. Everything is fine. Should I worry? Okay, I'll tell her you called. Yes, I expect her to call tonight. Okay, bye. Carla said she would call Brenda and then contact Dawn. Dawn wrote to Terry about making the first post on Brenda's Facebook page. Look there, he suggested. Here is a link to her page. Dawn then turned off the phone and went to bed. When Dawn woke up the next morning, he sent the kids to school and then turned on the phone. Carla left a message saying she couldn't reach Brenda and asking if he had heard from her. Brenda also left a text from an unknown number. She wrote that her phone was not working for some reason, so she borrowed a colleague's phone and would try to contact him again tomorrow evening after the conference ended. So Dawn realized that, at least at that point, Brenda didn't know what was going on at home. Later that afternoon, he received a message from a team of private investigators saying that George and Brenda had gotten off the ship and were now at a nudist beach. The message was soon followed by photographs. Dawn smiled, realizing that he would have even more material for the evening post. As soon as Dawn returned from work, he received more photos of them lying naked on the beach. Then detectives found something special. It turned out that George and Brenda rented a private cabin tent on the beach and had sex there. The booth was not completely enclosed, and detectives were easily able to use the zoom camera. They filmed a 5-minute video of their sexual intercourse. Dawn created a cloud account for data storage. It was a service where you could share materials by sending people a simple link. He also gave detectives the ability to upload material to the account, and they sent the video and all the photos there. Dawn watched the video the detectives uploaded to the cloud. Dawn had a hard time watching the video. It hurt him to see Brenda spending time with George. Despite his internal resistance, the recording provided him with important information. Dawn understood that this proof would play a key role. He felt that he now had what it took to get justice. Now it will become clear to everyone what she is, he thought. Detectives even zoomed in on the faces in the video to make sure there was no doubt about who was in it. Fine, you damn bastard. Now I have everything I need. I will burn you, you liar, and do it in front of all your friends and family, Dawn thought, seething with anger. Dawn logged back into Brenda's Facebook account and was surprised by the number of comments that had appeared since last night. Previously, there had only been a few harsh comments from Brenda's friends, but now it seemed like everyone was attacking her. Wait until they see the next posts, Dawn thought. He published more photos after blurring the intimate details and made a new post, writing it on behalf of Brenda. Why is everyone so angry? George, my new lover, is a great guy and really well built. A girl has a right to get a little fresh, right? To show what a great lover George is, I will upload all the photos and our new video to my cloud account. This is my first sex video. I think it turned out well. Take a look and tell me what you think. Can you understand why I can't get enough of this beauty? See how he makes me happy. By the way, I haven't told Dawn about this yet, so please don't say a word to him. To see my photos and videos, just follow this link. All photos and videos were in the cloud. He didn't need to blur the images, and they left little to the imagination. Anyone who visited the link could see it. Given that the account's address was posted on Brenda's Facebook page, Dawn assumed the account would get a lot of attention. Okay, Dawn thought. This should shatter everyone's illusions about Brenda as a loving wife and partner. Now everyone will know that she is a cheater who cares little about her husband and family. I still have a lot to do, Dawn thought. He made an appointment with a divorce lawyer the next day. He also planned to go to the bank and withdraw half of the money to put it in a separate account. That evening, he set about canceling all his credit cards. An hour later, Carla called him. "Oh my God, Dawn, Brenda is crazy. I think you've seen her Facebook posts yet." "Yes, Carla. I saw them this morning. Why didn't you tell me about it last night?" "I wasn't sure what exactly was going on. I couldn't believe Brenda would post something like that." "Dawn, have you seen her latest posts?" Don wanted to confess everything to Carla, but he needed a little more time. "No, Carla, I've decided not to watch anything related to that bitch of a sister anymore. Sorry for taking it out on you. She just betrayed me, and I'm done with her." Dawn, she posted more pictures and even a link to even more explicit pictures. She also posted a video of herself having sex with that bastard. Is she completely crazy? How could she do this to you? Everyone calls me because they can reach her. Dawn, I have to ask, is she taking revenge on you? You cheated on her, and now she's trying to get revenge. No, Carla, I swear to God, I never, not once, cheated on her. I don't know why she wants to be a prostitute, but apparently she wants everyone to know about it. Were you able to reach her? What? She says. No, Dawn. Her phone still goes straight to voicemail. I tried to contact the cruise line, but they said they didn't have a passenger named Brenda Primack. Do you know George's last name, Dawn? Apparently she registered under his last name. No, Carla, I don't know, and I don't care. I don't care if she comes back or not. If you talk to her, tell her I'm going to talk to the kids and tell them we're breaking up. I won't go into detail, but they should learn about it from me and not from someone else. Looks like the whole town knows about it now. Okay, Dawn, I'm really sorry. Even if she cheated, why did the whole damn world need to know about it? Dawn, you are a good person. You don't deserve this. I don't understand why Brenda behaves like a girl of easy virtue. Dawn's phone rang again. It was Terry. Oh my God, Dawn, you really gave them a blow with these photos, and the fact that they have video is just terrible. It was very difficult to watch. Now everyone at Davin Construction knows about the posts. Brenda was friends with many of her colleagues, so the whole company is discussing their cruise. About a dozen of our friends have already called me, expressing their support and concern. Terry, we got everything we needed. I think it's time to turn their phones back on. They will quickly realize that the game is over. Let them try to get out or just stay on this cruise. I don't care. Dawn, are you sure we did the right thing? After all, now their romance has become so public. I think George might even lose his job. It's unlikely that Brenda will be fired, but now all her friends know about her betrayal. Damn it, of course we did the right thing. They lied and cheated and humiliated us for the past year. They deserve it. Their friends and family now see them for who they are. We just made public what they did. We didn't force them to have an affair. Call me cruel, Terry, but if I could figure out how to destroy them even more, I would. I'll divorce this bitch so fast she'll be dizzy. To hell with her, to hell with them. Dawn, I've loved George for so long. It's just hard for me to realize that it's over. Terry, I would understand if Brenda came to me and said she wanted to leave or get a divorce so she could find another man. It would hurt, but she would respect me and I would respect her decision. But the way they act. Hell yeah, they went on a cruise together. It's like a slap in the face. They were having fun on some sandy beach while I took care of the children and went to work. Terry, you are a beautiful woman. You raised your children and now you spoil your grandchildren. What did George do? He just pushed you aside when he decided he could get someone younger. With your looks, you could have had any man you wanted, but you didn't. You committed yourself to marriage, and now you have a knife in your back. My advice is to hire a good lawyer and start filling out the paperwork. I'm meeting with my lawyers tomorrow. I've already started divorce proceedings, Dawn. I talked to the lawyers, and they are preparing preliminary documents. Well done, Terry. You're right, Dawn. It's just hard to believe that my life will change so much. But I think the changes will be for the better. Better because the life I lived was an illusion. In fact, George doesn't love me, and he's been cheating on me all this time, probably thinking about other women when he was with me. You're right, Dawn. Fuck George. Fuck them both. Let them burn in hell. Okay, Dawn. I'll call the phone company and ask them to turn George's number back on. I will also inform the detective agency that their work is finished. That night, after putting the kids to bed, Don watched Sports Center and drank his second deliciously sweet rum and Coke. The phone rang. It was Brenda calling. Don didn't answer, and the call went to voicemail. Over the next 2 hours, Brenda tried to call him every 15 minutes, leaving voicemails as the number of them kept increasing. She realized that it was all over, he thought, and turned off the phone. Lying in bed, Don could not sleep. He knew the coming week would be busy. In the morning, he was going to tell the children that he and his mother had problems, and they would no longer live together. This will be one of the most difficult conversations of his life. He knew the children would be confused and tried to prepare for their many questions. And Terry was right. These huge life changes will not be easy. Don hoped he could get joint custody of the children. Sharing time with them will be the hardest part. He knew it would be hard for Brenda too. She may have been a cheater, but she was still a good mom, and despite all his anger at Brenda, he still felt love for her. She was smart and witty. They always understood each other without words and enjoyed each other's company. He realized that it is possible to love and hate a person at the same time. What the hell is this, he thought. Don just wanted her cheating to never happen. He understood that Brenda needed attention, and this probably made her an easy target for a man like George. He knew that she was a little addicted to praise, but he never considered her selfish. How my opinion of Brenda has changed in recent weeks, he thought. She is selfish. She actively used everything I could give and did what she wanted. She doesn't care about me or my feelings, Don thought. I'm just someone who helps raise her children, someone who helps around the house. Maybe someone she could sleep with when her lovers weren't available. Looking back, Don couldn't understand why he hadn't noticed it earlier. Was he blinded by love for 10 years? How could he be so stupid? This won't happen again, thought Don. I believed that she would be the person with whom I would grow old. What an illusion it was. I was an idiot. Brenda's phone had been lying on the charger on the kitchen counter in their cabin and had not shown any sign of life for the past 3 days. But shortly after the cruise ship departed back to the US, the phone suddenly started making all sorts of noises. She took it, realizing it was working again. Damn it, she said. I think I have 23 messages. Both Brenda and George realized that this was not good. What's going on, Brenda? Why do you have so many messages? Oh God, I hope nothing happened to the children. Brenda began to panic. She noticed that most of the messages were from her sister, but none from Dawn. She didn't know what to think about it, but she still pressed the button to call Carla. The first thing Brenda heard were the words, "What the hell is going on there?" Carla didn't finish speaking. How the hell could you post crap like that on your Facebook page? Are you crazy? Brenda was completely confused. Why is Carla so angry? What other crap is on my Facebook page? This abomination about you being on a cruise with your lover George. How could you do this to Dawn? What about your children? Brenda was stunned. Her legs became weak. She staggered and sat down on the small sofa in their room. She couldn't speak, and George noticed her reaction. Brenda tried to say something, but no words came out of her mouth. Brenda, Brenda, are you still here? What the hell is going on? Carla, how do you know about George and the cruise? Brenda still didn't realize what Carla had said. Because it's all on your Facebook page. You and George are on a cruise, and there's a link to pictures of you naked doing it on some beach. There's even a video of you too, Brenda. A video of you apparently doing it on the beach. God, this is so disgusting. This is disgusting. The phone fell out of Brenda's hands and hit the floor. She just looked at him. George looked at her in bewilderment. What the hell is going on, Brenda? Brenda couldn't speak. She just looked at the phone, unable to pick it up. For her, he was like a hot stone. She could still hear Carla's voice. Finally, she picked up the phone and put it to her ear again. You must delete this page immediately and return home. Carla, we are already returning, but we will only be in Miami tomorrow morning. My flight home isn't until tomorrow evening. Then delete that crap and figure out what you're going to say to everyone. How could you do this, Brenda? Brenda was stunned and still couldn't process what she had heard. Okay, I'll try to figure it out with Facebook. Call me when you figure it out. And you should call Don, although I don't know what you'll tell him. Bye. Brenda hung up. Brenda deleted her Facebook page, but didn't know how to deactivate her cloud account. What she saw there was crazy. Who took these photos? How did this get on her account? Someone had clearly hacked her account, but how could the hacker know about her, George, and the cruise? And where did these damn photos come from? This hacker also added outrageous comments to the posts, clearly trying to make her look like some kind of prostitute. In fact, this makes me look like a girl of easy virtue, Brenda thought, and makes me look so cruel and disrespectful to Dawn and our marriage. She looked at the list of friends. There were less than 75 of them left. More than half of her friends removed her from their list. Oh God, everyone thinks I'm a cruel, evil person, and now everyone hates me. Brenda decided that the remaining 75 friends simply had not visited her page yet. My life is ruined. What about Don and the kids? Don must know. Why didn't he leave any messages? He must hate me for what I did. How can I fix all this? What will happen to my job at Davin Construction? Everyone there now knows for sure that I am having an affair with George, the vice president of marketing. God, our lives are completely ruined. George looked depressed. He already understood everything. Someone was following us, Brenda. Don probably knew what we were doing and hired a detective agency. He hacked your page and posted these photos. No, George, this can't be true. He must really hate me for ruining my life in front of all my friends and family. He's not that cruel. Brenda, think about it. How else could these photos get on your page? And he knew about me. The posts mentioned that I am the vice president of marketing. He knows many of your friends work with us, and he knew word would get back to Terry. I'm afraid we're both in big trouble. Brenda sat in stunned silence. The Don must have found out and decided to destroy me in anger. And I must admit, he did a great job, she thought. Most likely, both she and George will now be fired, and all her friends know that she cheated on her husband. What about her children? She hoped they wouldn't suffer too much of the consequences. Now they were stuck on this damn ship that was slowly heading back to the US. The cruise suddenly turned into a real nightmare. They both thought the same thing. This will be the longest 24 hours of my life. For them, it was like a ship sailing towards their common doom. They spent almost the entire evening in their cabin, hardly talking, and only went out to dinner at the buffet. George, how could Dawn do this? Well, you went on a cruise to have sex with another guy, George said with his eyes downcast. I just hope that by some miracle Terry hasn't found out yet. Go to hell, George. What about my marriage? Many of my friends work at Devon Construction. Surely the whole damn company knows about it, and of course Terry knows about it too. Do you think we will be fired? I don't know, Brenda. I don't even want to think about it now. The thought of what Brenda had said made George numb. He just sat there with a blank expression on his face and was silent. Both understood what awaited them when they returned. Their lives were crumbling, and they could only sit and wait for the ship to slowly return to Miami. George, I don't want to do this, but I just have to call Don. I have to explain to him that it was a mistake and find out if he posted the damn post. Brenda tried calling Don all evening, but he didn't answer. She tried again in the morning, but decided that he was avoiding her. She was surprised when he answered the second ring. Hello, Brenda. How is your conference going? Don, you know very well that I'm not at the conference. I know you've seen my Facebook page. You're the one who posted all this crap, aren't you? How could you even do this? Brenda was so angry that she ground her teeth. Click. Don hung up. Brenda tried to call him back, but he didn't answer. She called again and again, and after 15 minutes, he finally answered. Look, Brenda, I don't care how it all ended up on your page. I want to talk about how you left me at home with the kids while you went on some weird cruise to have sex with your lover on the beach. Brenda didn't know what to say. She understood that if she started talking about publications again, he would hang up again. Her anger subsided as she searched for words. Dawn, I'm so sorry. I don't know what came over me. I don't love him, and I don't want us to break up. We need... Brenda, I don't care what you need. I need to understand how you could do this to our family. Why did you decide that this is normal? Dawn heard her cry. Brenda, I don't need to hear you cry. I need an explanation for your behavior. Brenda could only sob. Oh my God, Dawn. Oh my God. Her words were hard to understand, but he understood that she was saying something to the effect that she had to find a way to fix everything. Brenda, just come home and we'll figure it out. Dawn knew he was lying. He understood that the only way out was divorce, but for some reason he wanted to soften the blow a little for her. Okay, Dawn, I'm so sorry. I love you. I know we can make things right. Bye, Brenda. See you. Dawn hung up. George Terry's call went no better. She knew everything. Moreover, it was she who hired private detectives and was involved in the plan with Facebook. George knew it could cost him his job, but he couldn't be mad at Terry. He realized how much he had hurt her and only wanted to try to fix everything and save the family. I don't have words to express how sorry I am, Terry. I ruined everything, and I'm willing to spend the rest of my life trying to fix it. George had no idea that Terry had already decided to divorce. I love you, Terry. I'll find a way to make things right. Terry hung up abruptly. George thought she was being merciful by not prolonging the conversation. He thought they could discuss everything when he returned home. 24 hours later, George and Brenda were passing through the final security checkpoint and heading to baggage claim. Drivers in smart suits stood at the exit, holding signs with people's names on them. George and Brenda ignored them as two men emerged from the crowd, also dressed in formal suits. George looked at them in surprise, realizing that he had not ordered a limousine to take them home. "Are you George Carlson?" asked one of the men. The second one looked at Brenda. "Are you Brenda Primack?" They both nodded, still confused. Both men simultaneously took large envelopes from their leather cases and handed them to George and Brenda. "You have been summoned to court," they said in unison. Brenda's story. "My God, what a nightmare this is. Trapped on this ship while my world crumbles around me. I stood on the balcony of my cabin, near the railing, and looked at the ocean. I saw us moving. I saw the trail that a cruise ship leaves as it cuts through the water, but it still seemed like we were standing still. This damn ship will take forever to get to Miami." It's still hard to believe that Dawn not only found out about my affair, but also exposed me to everyone via the internet. I always loved Facebook and my social connections, but Dawn used them against me to get revenge for my betrayal. He made me out to be an overweight girl of easy virtue who didn't care about her husband and family. I understand that cheating on him was wrong, but it was. I don't know, just an adventure. I still loved Dawn and our children. George and I were followed by private investigators who took secret photographs and even videos of the most compromising situations. And that message Dawn posted on Facebook pretending I wrote it made me look like a heartless bitch. How could I be so stupid? I was thinking about what George and I have been doing all year. We had sex at least once a week and met during several work trips. What was I thinking? How could I believe that Dawn wouldn't find out? First, George seduced me, and we started dating. Then we went on business trips together, and at the end, there was this stupid cruise. I looked down at the water again. Same water, same trail. And still it seemed that the ship was not moving. Now I'm stuck in this cabin with the last person I want to see. George. I understood that this nightmare was just beginning. I knew it would peak when I got home, but I still wanted to get there so badly. This slow ride back was just killing me. Although it was difficult to think logically, I knew I needed to make good use of this time to think through what I would tell Dawn and how I could save our marriage. God, Dawn must be furious. He posted this crap on Facebook, and now the whole world knows. This bastard should have just talked to me. Obviously, he knew what was going on. He shouldn't have let me on that stupid cruise. Instead, he hired a private investigator to follow me and take pictures. He just wanted to show that he was in control of the situation and get revenge for what I did. Damn, I wanted to kill him, but my thoughts returned to the reality of what I had done. My stupid behavior is not his fault. Finding out that I was cheating must have been terrible for him. Now I needed to go home and fix everything. It was necessary to remove this crap from Facebook and then convince Don that it was a mistake. I had to convince him that this would never happen again. I knew it would take a long time to rebuild what was broken, but I was willing to go through with it because I truly loved Don and wanted to keep our family together. But this nightmare was even more than just the destruction of my marriage. Everyone knows, family, friends, everyone. What will I tell them? There's not much that can be explained, but I wanted them to know that I didn't write it. And now I'm stuck on this cruise ship. My life is like a disaster in slow motion. The cruise ship finally made it to Miami, and we collected our luggage and headed to the airport. I tried calling Don again, but the call went straight to voicemail. What time does our flight arrive, George? We've barely spoken for the past few hours, each of us lost in our own thoughts, just doing what we need to do to get home. I don't think either of us wanted to discuss the feeling of horror that enveloped us both. I wanted to go home so badly, but the closer we got to this moment, the more afraid I was of what lay ahead. Do you think your marriage can handle this, George? Yes, I think it will hold up. I cheated on Terry for the first time. When he said the word cheated, I realized how terrible it sounded. I used to think of my actions as just sex. Maybe she even called it a novel, but betrayal? Yes, I was a traitor. I cheated, and there was no turning back. I'm not sure my marriage will survive. Oh, I think Don will give me a chance, but he's not the kind of person who forgets insults easily. Hell, he's still mad at his older brother for pursuing his girlfriend in high school. We have to hope for the best, Brenda. I know I'll do everything I can to keep Terry. So it's all over between us. George turned his head sharply and looked into my eyes with an expression of shock. Then he realized that I was not serious and relief appeared on his face. We both tried to laugh, but neither of us was in the mood, so the conversation fizzled out again. I was awakened abruptly by the landing of the plane. I don't usually sleep on planes, but the anxiety of the last 36 hours has left me exhausted. When George and I stood up to get our luggage from the overhead bins, we just looked at each other. It seemed we had arrived at our point of reckoning, and there was nothing more to be said. Brenda, I just hope the next few days go well for you, or at least as well as they can. Just try to convince Don that you still love him, and maybe you can make things right. This is what I'm going to do with Terry. This is the first time for both of us to be in this situation, so I hope our spouses can forgive us. I looked into George's eyes. I didn't know what to say. My vision blurred and tears began to stream down my cheeks. I just don't know how I'll ever be able to look him in the eyes. He knows what we did, and I hurt such a good man. I'm still angry that he went public with all this, but maybe I would have done the same thing if I were him. He probably did exactly what I would have done in the same circumstances. We cannot blame them for our misdeeds. My advice to you, don't even mention posting on Facebook. You can't blame him for anything. Just try to fix your marriage. The passengers in front of us had already left the plane, and we walked down the aisle to the exit. As we left the terminal and headed towards the escalator towards baggage claim, I noticed men waiting with signs offering transfer services. George and I ignored them since we both had cars in the airport parking lot. But then several men began calling us by name. I was confused. Did Don send someone to meet me? The men approached us, confirmed our identities, and handed each of us an envelope. You have been handed the documents, they said almost simultaneously. I looked at them with a blank expression. I didn't understand what they were talking about. As the men began to leave, George looked at me. I saw deep sadness in his eyes. He understood everything. They filed for divorce, Brenda. These are divorce papers. I felt my legs give way beneath me. It felt like my knee joints had turned to jelly and could no longer support my body. I just fell to the floor. My whole body was numb, and I could feel tears streaming down my face. I cried loudly. People around me looked at me with concern. After a while, I raised my head, but George was no longer there. In the distance, I saw him slowly walking away down the corridor. 45 minutes later, I picked up my car and purposefully drove home. I sent Don a message letting him know I was on my way. I'm sure he needed to prepare just like me. George had previously advised me to save my marriage, but now it seemed that Don was heading toward divorce. This did not mean that there were no more chances. I was going to give it my all, hoping it wasn't too late. I almost don't remember how I got home. My mind was racing, but I couldn't come up with a clear plan of action. All I knew was that I needed to go back and talk to Dawn. All this endless waiting on the road, and now I finally found myself on the street where I lived. It was early evening, but the sun had not yet set. Dawn always parked the car in the garage, so I couldn't tell if anyone was home. My day of judgment was about to begin, and a wave of nausea washed over me. Maybe he changed the locks and won't let me in. I didn't know what awaited me, but I finally returned home. Approaching the door, I stopped and listened. There were no sounds coming from inside. I grabbed the handle and turned it. It was locked. Was I right? He changed the locks and wasn't going to let me in. I inserted the key into the keyhole, and it turned easily. I opened the door and immediately realized that no one was home. In the evening light, the house was dark. Neither Dawn nor the children who would run out to meet me. I dragged my suitcase inside and turned on the light in the hallway. "Hey, is anyone home?" I asked loudly in the silence. "Damn, they're not here," I muttered under my breath. I left my suitcase at the door and began to walk around the house. Everything was in its place, but the silence was unsettling. At least Dawn hasn't packed up and left yet. I walked up the stairs towards our bedroom. When I reached the children's room, I stopped and looked inside. The beds were not made, toys were lying on the floor. I put my selfish desires before my family, and now I may have lost it all. The sight of the nursery, scattered toys, Chelsea's pink blanket, and Trevor's Transformers sheets seemed surreal to me. Could I really lose this reality? Your family. Am I still welcome here? I felt my legs betray me again, and I grabbed the door frame to keep from falling. I was overcome by sobs again. I don't know how long I stood and cried, but at some point I realized that I needed to find out if Don had left. Perhaps he took the children to his parents and then packed his things and left. I walked down the hallway to our bedroom. Looking around, I realized that nothing had been touched. Don didn't pick up his clothes. I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe this was a positive sign. I finally went downstairs to the kitchen. I hadn't eaten much for the past 2 days and thought eating might help me clear my head. There was a folded note from Dawn on the table. That's it. Now at least I know what's going on. The note was short and to the point. Don wrote that he and the children were with his parents. Tomorrow is Sunday, and he said he would come in the morning so we could talk, and then I could see the kids in the afternoon. Oh God, I'll have to wait again. Why is Dawn doing this to me? This punishment seemed endless, although deep down I knew that this was probably just the beginning. I knew our conversation would be tough, but I was determined to stick it out and let him know that I still loved him. I never stopped loving Dawn, but somehow I allowed myself to be drawn into George's advances. I realized that I needed to delete that post from Facebook, so I went into our home office and logged into my account. When I saw what Dawn posted, pretending that I wrote it, I was stunned. I knew I hurt him, but damn, he practically destroyed me with these posts. They made me look like a complete emotionless slut. I deleted the post and decided to publish an explanation. I want everyone to know that the last posts you may have seen on my behalf were not written by me. My account was hacked. Yes, I made a terrible mistake. I had an affair with another man, and I'm not proud of it, but I definitely didn't post evidence of it for everyone to see. Sorry you had to see this. I signed out and went back upstairs to the bedroom. I didn't have the strength to drag my suitcase along with me. I fell on the bed in my clothes and started crying again until at some point I fell asleep. I woke up the next morning still in my clothes, but somehow overnight I found myself under the covers. The clock only showed 7 in the morning, but I didn't know when dawn would arrive, so I forced myself to get up. Only then did I realize that I was still wearing yesterday's clothes. I undressed and went to the bathroom. Everything seemed strange, being alone in my house, showering in an empty house on a Sunday morning. The feeling that I had ruined my life returned, but I no longer cried. I felt more in shock than despair. Don would be here soon, and I didn't know what to say or, more importantly, what he would say. Will he even consider not getting a divorce? I realized that I still had not looked at the papers that were handed to me. What were his conditions? I should have at least studied them before he arrived. This thought gave me purpose for the morning. After my shower, I went down to the kitchen and made myself some coffee and toast. Butter and strawberry jam on toast has always been a favorite of mine. Considering I hadn't eaten again last night, I practically gulped my food down. I took out the papers and began to study what might become my new life. I'm not a lawyer, and there was a lot of legal gobbledygook in the paperwork, but it sounded like Don wanted 50-50 shared custody of the children. We had to split the proceeds from the sale of the house. Damn, this seems to be what 9 years of marriage have come down to. It felt like I was reading my death sentence. I knew I had to find a way to slow down this Don onslaught. You will probably need to hire a lawyer to look at these documents. I started rereading them more carefully when I heard Don come into the house. I moved away from the table and hurried into the living room. Don, you are here. I couldn't think of anything else. We just looked at each other until I walked up to him and extended my hand. I wanted to hug him. Never in my life have I needed someone's hug so much. He looked at me with an indifferent expression and said nothing. When I came closer, he extended his hand and put out his palm, as if pushing me away. There was no hug. I stopped 3 feet away from him, looked him straight in the eye, and started crying. Don, I'm so sorry for everything that happened. His facial expression was incomprehensible to me. He looked angry, but even more confused. What did he hope I would say? Did he think that I didn't want him anymore? God, I felt terribly sorry for this man whom I betrayed. I felt like the last piece of dirt. I had ruined a good man's life, and now he stood here, not knowing how to deal with his wife's betrayal. I was standing in front of a man who had embarrassed me in front of my family and friends, but I couldn't feel an iota of negativity towards him. I was the one who ruined everything, and now I had to find a way to fix everything. Dawn, say something. Call me some trash. Tell me how bad I messed this up. But please just talk to me. Brenda, how could you? How could you just throw our marriage in the trash? I thought you loved me. He fell silent and just looked into my eyes. There was real confusion in his gaze. He asked questions and expected honest answers, but I had no idea how to give them. I'm so sorry, Dawn. What about me? He said. I thought you loved me, and it never even occurred to me that you would cheat on me. I mean, never at all. I thought we were doing great. I froze and then blurted out. I don't know, Dawn. I wish I could give you answers, but somehow he seduced me and things went too far. I didn't feel like I needed anyone, but when George started flirting with me, I got hooked on the feeling. I let it go too far. Yes, Brenda, this is putting it mildly. You blew up our marriage. I mean, what the hell? Did you need another man? Mine wasn't good enough. Were you so horny that you just had to sleep with someone else? I just looked at him. I felt tears rolling straight down my cheeks. What could I say? So he continued. What about the children? Do you care what happens to them? Now they will live in 2 different houses. Oh God, Dawn, please, you have to reconsider your decision. Please don't divorce me. I never had feelings for George. It was just stupid of me. I don't want a divorce. I love you and I promise with all my heart that I will find a way to make things right. Please, if not for me, then for the sake of the children. Fuck you, Brenda. Now you're trying to put all this on me. If I don't take you back, Will that mean I'll destroy our family? Will it be my fault that the children will grow up in a broken home? No, Brenda, there's no turning back here. Pack your things and leave. I'll bring the kids after lunch. You can be with them in the evening and spend the night on the couch. Tomorrow, while I'm at work, gather everything you need and disappear before I return. No, please, Dawn, don't make me leave. Tears were streaming down my face, and my mouth was so dry it felt like it was filled with glue. I sobbed and my voice became hoarse. I'm so sorry, Dawn. Please give us one more chance. I looked down, my eyes were full of tears. When I looked up, he was already at the door, and then he left. I fell on the sofa and just burst into tears. About an hour later, Dawn returned with the children. They were delighted to see me and rushed into my arms. I hugged them and looked at Dawn with sadness in my eyes. He just looked at me with a blank expression and walked past us into the office. I tried not to cry, but the children sensed that I was upset. I just hugged them as if I never wanted to let go, and then I realized that this was probably bothering them. I pulled myself together for the sake of the children. I made them dinner, and we cuddled on the couch while watching TV. At about 9, I put them to bed. I didn't see Don all evening until around 10 when he left the office and went upstairs to the bedroom. I heard the alarm on my phone go off, and only a minute later I realized that I was lying on the couch. To my surprise, I slept like a log and felt rested. After waking up the kids and making them some cereal for breakfast, I made myself some coffee. While they were happily eating, I went up to our bedroom. As I suspected, Don was gone. Our 2 large suitcases were lying on the bed. Damn, how caring of him. I took the kids to school and returned home. Maybe I won't pack up and leave. After all, this is my home too. But I knew I needed to give Don space and let him be in control. I decided to let him lead, to continue to show him that I loved him and that we needed to raise our children together. I knew he still loved me despite all the pain I caused him. We just needed time, and I was sure his heart would soften. I called my sister. She was still alone and living alone. Brenda, what's going on? Are you back in town yet? Yes, I returned yesterday. Don didn't waste any time, Carla. He filed for divorce right at the airport. I still think we can work things out, but he's very, very angry. He wants me to get out of the house. Can I stay with you for a while? Well, I think so. Her answer was a little hesitant, and I wondered if my sister despised me for what I had done. I didn't think she hated me, but maybe she didn't really like me at that moment. Thank you, Carla. I'll come back after work if I haven't been fired yet. I was surprised when I came to work. I didn't know what to expect, but everything was as usual, with the exception of sidelong glances and outright stares from some of the employees. The day was quite productive. I had a backlog of emails and needed to contact several partners who had left messages for me. During lunch, I wanted to avoid meeting my colleagues, so I went to a diner and ate lunch alone. All day at work, I expected that I would receive a call and be summoned to the boss's office, but this never happened. I saw him in the middle of the day at a meeting. Afterward, he looked at me and asked if I had time to get things done after being away the previous week, and then mentioned that we had a lot of work to do to prepare an important partnership agreement that was almost completed. Damn it, are they going to fire me? It seemed that there would not even be a conversation with me. I knew that everyone here knew what happened between me and George, and I didn't understand why I wasn't at least reprimanded. I found this out later in the week when I was finally able to talk to George. He said an agreement had been reached. They weren't going to fire us. He forfeited his annual bonus and was placed on probation for 1 year. But they didn't do anything with me because they were afraid that I would sue for sexual harassment. It seemed like they just wanted things to calm down quickly. George also said that he and Terry are trying to improve their relationship. Since this was his first betrayal, she decided to give him a second chance. Terry has put her divorce filing on hold while they go to counseling. Well done, George. I wish Don felt the same way. He doesn't even want to talk to me. Don gave me his lawyer's number and barely spoke to me after our first conversation. A couple of days after returning, I moved my things to my sister. I hoped that by giving Don space and showing him that I wasn't trying to control the situation, I could soften him up and he would start talking to me. This week, I took the kids out to dinner. We went to McDonald's with a playground. They enjoyed riding the slides and climbing the net. As I sat and watched them, I suddenly felt a sense of sadness wash over me, and I began to cry. God, I need to hold on for the sake of the children. When we returned home, we walked to the door, and I, standing in the hallway, kissed and hugged them. I saw their confusion. They thought I had returned home. Smoothing Chelsea's hair, I tried to explain. Your dad and I had a fight, and I'm going to stay with Aunt Carla for a few days. I looked up and saw Don standing in the living room. I love you very much and hope to return next week. Chelsea and Trevor looked at me. They saw my sadness, and I saw theirs. Be good for Dad. I'll see you soon. Now go upstairs and get ready for bed. They looked at Dad and headed upstairs. Brenda, you shouldn't give them false hope. You won't be back here next week. Dawn, I know I screwed up terribly. I know you're angry and hurt, but please don't ruin everything over this. I made a mistake, but I promise it will never happen again. I wanted to hold on, but I felt tears welling up in my eyes. I promise. Don interrupted me. He walked towards the door. Brenda, you've been cheating on me for a year. You were disrespectful and obviously didn't value our marriage. Your actions told me everything I needed to know. He opened the door, indicating that it was time for me to leave. I reminded myself once again that I had to give him time and space, so I left without saying a word. I knew I needed to talk to my parents, and I convinced Carla to come with me to them. She talked to them and arranged for us to come over for dinner on Friday. Mom and Dad always trusted me. I have always been reasonable, even as a teenager. When I told them what happened, I saw disappointment in their eyes. I felt like they were waiting for me to tell them something terrible about Don, like that he treated me badly or neglected me, but I didn't have anything like that to say. When I finished telling the story, I was already crying, trying to pull myself together. Normally, my parents would do anything to ease my grief, but this evening they just looked at me as if they were confused. I understood their reaction. How could they console me? What could they say? Brenda, will everything be okay? No, they couldn't say anything like that. Finally, my mother came up to me and just hugged me. We love you, Brenda. We just hope Dawn can find a way to forgive you. The next week, I found a lawyer and made an appointment. I needed a lawyer if only to let Dawn know that I was taking this situation seriously. After our lawyer spoke, Dawn was very accommodating in matters involving children. I could pick up the kids on weekends and spend Wednesday evenings with them. On these Wednesdays, I could be home with them, and Dawn would leave and return only when the children went to bed. We got used to this routine, but Dawn still only spoke to me when necessary. I started preparing big lunches for the kids on Wednesdays so they could eat them for a few more days. This made me feel part of the family, and I began to enjoy these evenings. One Wednesday, a few weeks after these meetings began, I came home. Dawn usually just said hello and stayed for a minute to make sure everything was okay. Brenda, thank you for preparing such big dinners for us. Just hearing him talk to me again was a joy. Of course, Dawn. Do you have any wishes? What would you like me to cook next week? I'll be happy to do whatever you want. I smiled. I saw that Dawn suddenly felt awkward. Whatever the children want will be good. In the weeks that followed, I felt that giving Dawn space was the right decision. I knew he was enjoying the leftovers from his lunches, so I started doing the laundry. Folding his clothes and putting them in the drawer made me feel even more connected. One night, I wrote a note saying I loved doing these things for him and the kids. I put the note in the drawer on top of his underwear, where he was sure to find it. I hoped he would thank me when I came to pick up the kids on Saturday, but he never said anything. However, I knew he was softening. Now, sometimes we talked about children and other things when he returned late on Wednesday evenings. I felt that our conversations were becoming less tense. This went on for a couple of months. I asked my lawyer to take time with the divorce, but not to make it too obvious. There were 90 days of waiting, and I hoped that this nightmare would end long before then. Dawn also seemed in no hurry to get a divorce, and I was going to use that to my advantage. After about a month, I decided to take the next step. The following Wednesday, I wore more revealing clothes and put on makeup. As Dawn left that evening, I told him I wanted to talk to him when he got back and that I had a surprise for him. I smiled and looked into his eyes. I could see that he didn't know what to think of my words, but as I had hoped, he didn't ask any questions. I just wanted to sow doubt and keep him guessing what I was up to. When Don returned home that night, he looked worried. "What did you want to discuss, Brenda?" "Oh, I didn't want to talk so much as I wanted to give you something." I smiled widely and looked into his eyes. Don's eyes slid over my body, and I realized that he was wondering if I was going to give him myself. Actually, that was my plan, but not right away. "Dawn, you didn't think I'd forget about your birthday, did you?" I took out a small box and handed it to him. "Brenda, you shouldn't have." "Dawn, you're still my husband, at least for now. Please accept this gift." I looked into his eyes. He looked at me and smiled. Taking the gift, he opened it and found a beautiful Omega Seamaster watch. I knew he loved quality watches, and these were just his style. I stood close when he opened the box. I wanted him to smell my perfume. He put on his watch and looked at me again, smiling. I guessed he was at the End Zone, a local sports bar, and I smelled alcohol on his breath. This was my chance. "Dawn, I have something else for you." He didn't ask what it was, but just looked into my eyes. "Dawn, I've missed you so much these past months." I missed our time together. I came closer. Dawn just stood there. I kissed him tenderly on the lips. I saw hesitation in his eyes. "Dawn, please don't think too much. I'm not asking you to let me come back. I just want us to be together tonight on your birthday." I kissed him again. At first he hesitated a little, but then he began to respond to my kiss. When we broke the kiss, I whispered in his ear, "Happy birthday, Dawn. Please take me upstairs. I know you need this as much as I do." Dawn kissed me passionately. God, how I missed this man. While he concentrated on the kiss, I unbuttoned his shirt. When it swung open, I left it hanging over his shoulders and put my hand on the front of his trousers. "We need to go upstairs, Brenda, before the kids see us." He grabbed my hand and persistently pulled me up the stairs. I was delighted, not only because I was horny and ready for good sex, but also because I hoped it would help us repair our relationship. I thought Don would be so excited that he would rip my clothes off as soon as we were in the bedroom, but after closing the door, he slowly walked towards me and kissed me tenderly. He then stepped back, looked at me, and gave me a loving smile. I thought I would just melt. It was much more than I could have expected. If he ripped my clothes off and just had rough sex with me, even if it was angry sex, I would be happy. I would, of course, enjoy this unbridled desire, but most of all I wanted to be with the man I love. But Don decided not to rush. He slowly undressed me. He unbuttoned and removed my blouse, then turned me around and kissed my neck, unclasping my bra. As he fell forward, Don continued to kiss my neck and cupped my breasts with his hands. Don looked at me as if he was seeing me for the first time. His gaze mixed with love, tenderness, and barely restrained desire. His fingers slowly slid down my arm, stopping at my wrist. "You can't even imagine how beautiful you are," he whispered, leaning closer. I felt the warmth of his words creep deep inside, causing me to tremble slightly. He hugged me, his hands slid along my back, pressing me to him. His touch was confident but not rushed, as if he wanted to remember every detail of this moment. "Dawn," I said quietly, feeling my cheeks burn, "I'm so glad we're here together. You always know how to make me happy." "And I will always know," he answered, smiling slightly. His fingers gently touched my face, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. I closed my eyes, feeling his lips touch mine. This kiss was deep, warm, and long. He took his time, as if he wanted this moment to last forever. When our lips parted, Don said softly, "I want this night to be special, so that you can feel how much I love you. I smiled, barely holding back tears of happiness, and quietly answered, "You're already making her special, Don." We stood like that for some time, enjoying the silence and closeness of each other. His hands continued to move over my body, studying every line, as if he wanted to remember me this way. He lifted me up and laid me on the bed, covering me with his body. His lips touched my shoulder, neck, and collarbone. There were no words between us, but every movement, every look spoke more than any phrases. "I want you to be happy," he whispered. "Tell me, what do you want?" "Only you, Dawn," I answered, smiling. "Always only you." We continued to move in time with each other, immersed in a flow of emotions that could not be described in words. Our breaths mingled, our hearts beat in unison. It was not just the proximity of bodies, it was a meeting of souls, full of love and understanding. When it was all over, we were left lying next to each other, holding hands. Don looked at me with a soft smile. "You know, you make me better," he said. "And you make me believe in miracles," I answered, burying my nose in his shoulder. The night was filled with warmth, love, and silence that did not need words. We lay side by side, our hot bodies gradually recovering from the peak of pleasure. I turned and hugged his neck. I pressed myself against him and didn't want this moment to end. We had almost caught our breath when I said, "Dawn, I love you with all my heart. Please let me go home. I want us to be together again." It was said incorrectly. He pulled back and looked into my eyes. He had a strange expression on his face, almost as if he was afraid. Then he got up and sat on the edge of the bed. He didn't say a word, just sitting there. Suddenly, he stood up and began to get dressed. He seemed to be in a panic. "Brenda, I'm sorry, but I can't. We can't be together again. I just don't know how I'll ever be able to trust you. You'll deceive me again, I just know it." He quickly got dressed. Suddenly, fear broke through in my voice. I felt tears welling up in my eyes. "Stop, Dawn. I'll never do this again. God, stop it, Dawn." I jumped up and tried to hug him. I didn't understand why he was getting dressed, but when he finished, he hurried down the stairs and ran out of the house. I ran after him and ended up in the living room when he closed the front door. I went to the window and saw him start the car and drive away. I fell to my knees. I was still naked and just sat there, sobbing. How could this night end so badly? A few minutes later, I ran upstairs to the bedroom and grabbed my phone. "Please, Dawn, please just answer," I said. He replied, "Thank God." "Dawn, what happened? Where are you? Please come back." "Brenda, just stay home today. I'll come back later. I just need time to think. Sorry, I panicked, but I'll be back later. Can you do it?" "Of course, but please come back soon. You scared me." "Okay, I'll be back in a while. I need to think. I love you, Don." I lay awake for at least a couple of hours before falling asleep. I slept in our bed, hoping Don would wake me when he returned, but he didn't. In the morning, I got up early, hoping that he at least slept on the sofa, but he was not. I made myself some coffee and picked up the phone to call him, but at that moment I heard him come through the door. I walked into the living room, and when he saw me, he stopped and just stared. He looked like he hadn't slept at all. "Oh my God, Don. Where have you been?" "I went to the park and slept in the car. Sorry for being so scared yesterday. Everything that was in my head just came at once. It's my fault, Don. I seduced you with my birthday idea and pushed too hard. I hope I haven't ruined the progress we've made. Grab a cup of coffee, take a shower, and then we'll talk." When Don came down from his shower, I realized that his words would not bring anything good. "Brenda, I just can't do this. I can't keep my head torn over you. After your betrayal, I was sure that everything was over between us. But over the past couple of months, I have felt lost. You weren't in my life, and it was like a huge hole." I knew that Dawn was very divided, but I hoped that the conversation would end positively. This didn't happen. Dawn said that even if we tried to get back together, it would be very difficult for us, and in the end, it would most likely end badly. I put down my cup of coffee and started crying. I didn't know what to do next. Dawn started crying too. We just stood there and cried. Finally, Don came over and took my car keys from the kitchen table and handed them to me. He hugged me and slowly led me to the door. We didn't say a word. We both seemed to be in a state of shock. We knew that this walk to the door meant the end. Our marriage, our time together, had truly come to an end. I walked out the door and turned around, standing on the porch. We just looked at each other as Dawn slowly closed the door. I was stunned as I got into the car and drove away. What should I do now? About a year later. Facebook post. Friends and family on Facebook. Not long ago, I had a wonderful life. I had a loving husband, wonderful children, and a beautiful home. I had a good job and many true friends. Today, almost none of this remains. My children are healthy, thank God, but I no longer see them every day like I used to. My husband Don, a loving and caring man, divorced me. Although my parents, brothers and sisters, and true friends did not turn their backs on me, our relationship became strained. It's all my fault. I made a stupid, selfish mistake. I disrespected myself and especially my husband by starting an affair with another man. I cheated on my husband. I became a cheater. I want to write and tell everyone I have offended and disappointed that I am truly sorry. This experience humbled me, stripping me of my former sense of superiority and arrogance. I ask for your forgiveness. I also write this as a warning to those who, like me, underestimate the consequences of their actions. Your poor decisions can, and almost certainly will, ruin your life and the lives of those you love. Forgive me, Chelsea. Forgive me, Trevor. I'm sorry, Don. Despite the way I acted, I always loved you all. The next day I got up, opened my laptop, and went on Facebook. I had several responses to yesterday's post. They were mostly positive and understanding. It warmed me that people could be so forgiving. I may have fewer friends on Facebook now, but the ones that remain have been kinder and less judgmental. And then I saw it. It was from Don. Add to friends. It was a friend request from Don. I understood that we would never be together as a couple again, but at least we were friends again. End. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.